We like to think that there are children in our community who are all cared for, who are all wanted and loved, and who all are doing the right thing with their lives, but that's not always true. So today we'll talk with two guests about the juvenile justice system here in Austin and Travis County. Stay with us for Austin Faith Dialogue.
Austin Faith Dialogue, at the crossroads of religion and life. A series highlighting the cultural and social interactions between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KXAN. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
We're glad you joined us today on Austin Faith Dialogue when we're talking about juvenile justice with two people who work with the Travis County Juvenile Court. We've got Floyd Vick, who's a chaplain in the court system, and Dobbs Rogers, who is one of the chief probation officers. Glad to have you both here today. Let me, as we start the conversation, not assume that people know exactly what falls under the umbrella of that name, that it's more than just a courtroom. So perhaps, Dobbs, you can describe what's included?
In Texas, all counties in Texas have a juvenile probation department. The Travis County Juvenile Court is your juvenile probation department, and what we do is we provide probation supervision to children after they've been found guilty of delinquent conduct. The court itself, of course, is just that, the court, the district court that hears the cases. We also are responsible for all children who are taken into custody by law enforcement officials. If they need to be incarcerated for a brief period of time or for whatever, they must be brought to the Travis County Juvenile Court. That is the only detention center certified by the court to hold children in that manner. There are some temporary holding facilities at the police departments, obviously, but if they're going to be held longer than 6 hours, they need to be referred to our court. We would then refer the case, whatever it may be, to the district attorney's office, and they would make a determination as to whether or not to actually file delinquent conduct charges or not. Once the case went through court, we have a variety of interventions that we attempt with the children, and in some cases, first-time offenders are given what's called deferred prosecution, which means that they are not actually taken to the guilt and innocence phase of the proceedings. They are allowed probation in lieu of that, conditioned upon their good behavior. If they're put on formal probation, then the same similar types of things happen, the same supervision, access to services and so forth, but it's obviously a little more strict, a step up, if you will. And some children even need intensive supervision probation, which is intensive services and closer monitoring. We have a variety of programs, but basically that's the Travis County Juvenile Court Department. It is located in the Gardner Juvenile Justice Center at 2515 South Congress.
So it includes a whole range of services. So therefore, I assume on any given day, there are a lot of children in various places in the system. About how many on average do you serve?
Well, there may be as many as 800 on probation at any time. We get referrals that are about 10,600 referrals, and probably this year, the fiscal year 98, which runs from October 1 through September 30. That represents probably about 5,500 to 6,000 individual children. Some we've seen before, some we haven't. Mm-hmm. And as you say, they're in various stages in processing or service delivery or whatever may be the case. And it's all attendant upon the individual needs of the child.
Now, I would guess that this has got to sometimes be really difficult work. You're working with children who are perhaps themselves difficult or in crisis situations, that it might be easy to give up, to burn out, to whatever. Floyd, what keeps you going in the chaplaincy work that you do?
I think the thing that keeps me motivated is to recognize that these are children in need of help. One of the things is their response. While they may not turn out to be the model citizens we'd all hope and pray, the thing, and I'm going on my 9th year there, and their average population of the detention center, the incarcerated youngsters, around 80 right now, and I have services every Sunday. They must request to come to those services. They must ask, and I had 57 last Sunday, for instance. And so there's a good acceptance. They're reaching out for something. And if you can provide help and just simply give a genuine interest to them, I find that they respond to it. They're hungering for it, they need it. And if and a faith venture can do this, then I think we're meeting a need.
Right, and I can see where that would keep you going. But what is it for you, Dobbs? Since you're not working in providing direct spiritual services, what is it that keeps you going in this kind of work?
Well, originally it was, began in 1973, and coming out of college being pretty idealistic and thinking working with kids is what I wanted to do is what I did. And I've been there ever since. I think that one thing that makes me feel better about it is kids are incredibly resilient. They can take a lot and still come out and do okay. The majority of the kids that we have referred to us, we see once or twice. It's only a small group that is the dangerous, violent ones you read about. There are others that are property criminals, but many of them have mostly bad situations that they're trying to get away from one way or another, or crying for help. We can't fix everyone, and by the time they get to our back door, and the jurisdiction of the Travis County Juvenile Court is ages 10 through 16. So by the time they get to us, they've had a lot of years of whatever have taken to make them what they are. And it's not, there is no one answer. There's a lot of little answers. And you have to be prepared to try to make it attractive for a child to change. They have incredible lack of impulse control, and that causes problems. And I think everyone that's been a teenager, and that's every one of us, did stupid things. And the system is set up to allow a child to correct behavior and be able to get on with their adult life without impairing them even more. It's sort of like go under the physician's creed of first do no harm. And a lot of times what we've said is if we can just keep them alive long enough, they'll grow out of a lot of this.
That's really encouraging. I'm glad to hear that. And related to what the growth that they can do themselves, these young people, if I remember correctly, we've had a focus here in the state for several years on the needs of children, the needs of young people, so that we've brought some perhaps public money and public policy to bear on what these kids need. I wonder if either of you has seen a difference in your work or in the state of the kids who end up in the system based on all this public attention for the last several years. Has it made a difference?
I think it has, and I think one of the things that at the Justice Center that we've done is we've had some additional programs in terms of behavior modification. We've had a leadership program, a leadership academy program. Has 20-some youngsters are there over a long period of time after adjudication, and being instead of being sent away to the Texas Youth Commission, we have kept them in our community with a commitment on the part of the child and the parents to work with this, and we work with them over a period of time to change the family situation, to change their behavior, and this has proved to be very helpful. But that's just one of the many things we're doing in the last few years to try to make a difference in the life of the children.
With what, some additional funds then that came from this emphasis?
And placement, yes, here in the community.
Okay, and what have you seen, Dobbs?
Well, all the national attention is no surprise to anyone that juvenile crime has been on the rise, and now it appears to be leveling off. That obviously got the public's attention and the legislature's attention, and we did get some additional funding. I think when you talk about juveniles and crime, that you hear about in the spectacular and horrible stories that some kids can, crimes that children can commit. But the majority of them are not in that category. And it's incumbent upon us to give them an opportunity to change. I think that one of the things that we have not been as good at in the criminal justice and the juvenile justice system is identifying those children who are truly dangerous. And we are now doing better. And unfortunately, there's that small segment of our society, both adult and juvenile, that need to be sequestered. Humanely so, but it's for the protection of other people. If someone is stealing your stereo, that certainly is not appropriate, should not be tolerated, but it's a lot different from some of the crimes of violence. And so we try to offer up ways to intervene that allows these kids to progress. I think that when people talk about the environment that children are growing up in now and the homes that they do and things like that, I still see a lot of kids that are leading normal lives and doing what they need to do. I think that we just need to be cognizant of that fact because it's not necessarily a large number of individuals. It seems so at this time because of a lot of the attention, and in a way I'm glad that happened because we need to be able to protect the public as well as take care of the children. The problem is that anytime a kid, there are a lot of kids that grow up in bad environments and they do well. Some even excel. The difference seems to be someone that they cared about and cared about them was in their life, whether it was their grandmother or their mother or their dad or an older brother. It was someone that they could relate to in a positive manner that gave them the encouragement to go on. It happens all the time. We can't be there all the time. We can't be surrogate parents. It's incumbent upon all of us in the community to look after our kids. When I grew up, of course, it was a different time, but the church was involved, the school was involved. It was a much different time. I'm not sure it was better, it was just different. And we need to just be aware of where our kids are and what they're doing and intervene in positive ways every time you get a chance.
So that actually says a lot more about community involvement and individual involvement rather than the system is going to fix what has ever happened, right?
That's true. I don't think that the system can fix anyone. I think that we give opportunities for people to come to the realization that it's more attractive to do other things. That's important. If you don't have any hope that you're ever going to be a success in business or education or whatever you decide to do, then your motivation is pretty low. So
yeah, and thank you for bringing up that word hope because that's where people of faith who are watching today tie in. Hang on, we'll come back for some more conversation here on the second half of Austin Faith Dialogue. Stay with us. We're glad you're here for Austin Faith Dialogue when we're talking about the Travis County Juvenile Court with two people employed by that court, Chaplain Floyd Bick and Dobbs Rogers. We're glad you're both here. One of the things we just, right before the break, got to this whole notion of hope, I think very well stated, that if you have hope, there's a future out there for you, or likely to be. And I wonder if, jumping off from that, each of you might have a story of a young person that you've come in contact with through your work who's really been able to pull their lives together and just in a real dramatic way. If you might have a story you'd share.
It's a story that's not complete, but I had a young lady who was born to a crack addict mother. So she was hooked when she came into this world. 15 years old, in and out of our system, and had conversation. She attended the services that I conduct on Sunday, been in conversation about it, and said that she'd like to quit, but just didn't think she could do it. And with conversation, and the final outcome is that she's going to be sent to Texas Youth Commission for a year. And one of the things in conversation with is that one of the things that you'll find out is that you're convinced that you can't live without it. I says, but for 1 year you will. And if nothing else, at the end of that year, you can prove to yourself that you can survive without it. And the biggest thing you need is hope. And she says, I believe that if I could live a year without it, I could make it the rest of my life without it. And the story is turning. And out of this conversation and out of this perspective and going to TYC, I received what was, in one sense, a very immature response. I received like a Valentine card, I love you, Chaplain Bick. Now, this was one who counseled with her probation officers and talked with a judge and says, I agree, send her to TYC where she did not want to go. And yet she recognized this may be the best way to save her life. And so it's not always the fun things you do that reap the best rewards. And I feel that this is a part of the motivation that keeps me there. Here's a young child that I think will have a life.
That's right. She shows some tremendous determination.
And we have been able to provide the support and put hope in her life.
Right, right. Give her the chance again.
The chance.
And what about you, Dobbs? What have you seen?
A whole collage of kids comes to mind, just the faces, and I can say that there's one instance where a child was adopted. He was a boy, and his adopted father died when he was about 12, 13 years old. That created a lot of anger and frustration, and he began to act out significantly. As I got involved, what he really needed was somebody to set limits, and that's not always true. But and as it turned out fine, and he began to he straightened up and quit at least verbally abusing his stepmother and so forth, or his adopted mother, and went on and became a normal child, whatever that is. But the thing that it sticks in my mind is that I learned early on that I wasn't going to be able to take these kids to raise. That just wasn't going to be possible, and that if I tried to do that, I would burn out quick and not be able to be as effective. I had to decide I was going to do this work, do the best I could to involve children in constructive activities, or quit and take one of them, literally. And so if I could say anything about the faith community, and it's important for people to get involved with these kids' lives. And it's very important to be non-judgmental because they come from backgrounds that are often extremely different from ours, sometimes culturally, sometimes economically, sometimes psychologically, and so involvement with a positive role model, non-judgmental attitude is going to get you more mileage than simply telling kids they have to do something because you said so or the law said so. It's in a process of of cognitive learning. They often have to understand even how to have effective and positive relationships with people. It's something as simple as that. A lot of them have never been out of their 10-block area of their neighborhood. So I can see lots of them over the years, and I'm confident many of them went on and grew up and probably are doing well. And it's unfortunate, but we haven't learned how to categorically fix people who have these types of behavioral, psychological, criminal tendencies or whatever. And I just got into the philosophy that positive reinforcement is better than strictly punitive measures. That doesn't mean that kids don't need to be controlled. Their behavior doesn't need to be controlled, and they need to understand that there are limits. But that can be done with dignity and positiveness too. And it's just like what Floyd was saying. This kid thanked him for sending them, basically being instrumental in seeing that she was committed to the training schools for the state. And that tells you a lot right there.
Mm-hmm. She'd done a lot of growing. Well, you referred to people of faith getting involved. What are maybe some specific ways you can suggest, or perhaps the kinds of people who would be helpful to you in the work you're doing with young people?
Well, we obviously have a lot volunteers. We can always use volunteers. We try to involve them in everything from mentoring to tutoring to whatever. And we need that. I would like to say, though, pay attention to the kid that lives next door. Reinforce their positiveness. If they're doing something you think is right, tell them. This is not just about delinquent kids, it's about all kids. And it's important that we all, as adults, bolster their self-image. And one place we need to start is daycare. I mean, these kids, it's textbook knowledge that first 3 years of life are incredibly important in the development of a child, to the point that that is when they learn to have relationships where they can trust people. So if you miss those first 3 years, you missed a big step.
I want to interrupt this to say that as a chaplain there, I have services every Sunday. I also have solicited from the faith community, and on a rotating basis, I have services provided for the youngsters that are incarcerated Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and a Saturday afternoon. Mm-hmm. And I have different churches. Some do it first and third Tuesday, or first and second, fourth Tuesday. But I have a number of church groups that come out and bring Bible studies, worship service, sing inspiration songs. And so I invite them to contact me if they'd like to be a part of this with at least a 6-month or a year commitment. The other thing is that in the 8 years I've been there, it's been my personal goal to see that every child has a primary book of faith. If it's a Bible, and I give them a new Bible. I won't use Bibles. I want a new Bible. And every child that requested there, I gave 960 Bibles last year. Used no county funds. I speak at ladies group, men's group, Bible studies, youth fellowships, but secure Bibles so that every child may have a book of faith, whatever that faith may be. If it's something other than the Christian faith, if they request it, I will go out and try to secure that primary book of faith. And this is something that the listening audience can participate in.
And when you say book of faith from different faiths,
yes,
that also then implies that you have worship services for people of a variety of different faiths. We shouldn't assume that every is Christian
not
or
only a
whatever.
different variety, but we have, in terms of ethnic community, you have Spanish groups, black community, and white, Caucasian, providing services for children there. So we try to give them an opportunity to be exposed to as wide a range of the faith community that's here in our community.
Now, as there's a building program going on, as I understand, what kinds of facilities are you constructing, and does that provide maybe more opportunities for church folks to get involved?
I'm sure. At this point, you know, it's no surprise to anyone in Austin this is a boom town, and we've grown considerably since I moved here in '73, and unfortunately, just per capita, we end up having to have more beds for those the detention facility. But we've also decided that there is a group of kids out there who will not accept voluntary controls sometimes, but they're not of the nature that you want to send them to the training school. It's our intent that you leave kids in the community, you work with their total family, if they've got anything to work with at all, because that's where they're going to go back to. And if that hasn't been corrected or helped to the parents or single parents, whatever, have not been helped to understand how they can best intervene in their own child's life, then they're going to come back to the same place and get in the same kind of trouble. So we're building a 100-bed facility that is geared towards if kids who just thumb their nose at the court, don't come in at curfew, don't go to school. It's not the kind of thing you really want to send somebody to training school, but you've got to get their attention or it's going to escalate. So we would have a secure component where it's heavy on family counseling, group counseling, peer pressure, and they move from there into a non-secure setting and go to school. Then they begin to furlough home, and eventually they're at home in aftercare. And we have a lot of intensive services that we can provide to help support the family. Anywhere along that continuum is places that people can plug in. And we have a volunteer coordinator who's more than willing to work with people who would like to do that. You got to remember too, this is the government, it's pretty bare bones, so any little luxury for those kids who are doing well would be good. Like I say, some of them have not been out of Austin, so it's important that they get a wider understanding of the world and that doing good things leads to good things.
Right, okay. And in this building program, what will that do to the chaplaincy program?
It will certainly expand it because we'll have twice as many that'll be there over a period of time, and we'll try to minister all of the youngsters that are there.
Okay. Oh, that sounds good.
Exciting.
An opportunity to not only meet people's spiritual needs in a much more focused way, but also a structured program to perhaps help more kids get back to where they need to be.
Correct.
And you give tours?
I would invite people to come out to call the main number. I think that Travis County has a juvenile court system that they can be very proud of. It's state of the art, and I would like for people to see it. I think that you get a better understanding of what we're doing.
And folks then perhaps pitching in to help you in your work of returning kids back to society to be full productive members, right? Well, thanks Floyd and Dobbs. Our half an hour goes quickly these days, but we're glad to hear a little bit more about the juvenile justice system and really help all of society through helping our young people. We're glad you joined us today on Austin Faith Dialogue. We'll see you again next week right here on KNVA.